See what you open.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's 5:01 and it's Wednesday, so let's get started. If you haven't been here before, 5:01 Wednesday is a now bi-weekly Zoom from the Slow Wine Collective, and it's a chat with different wine people in this area, be they winemakers, restaurant owners, anyone who has something interesting to say. And today we have John Niven from Cadre Wines. Welcome, John.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, the Niven name might be familiar, but I'm super excited to talk about Cadre wines because the lineup of wines is really racy and exciting. So first of all, I want to know what you have in your glass, and then I'll tell you what I have in my glasses.
Well, I went with the Cadre Sauvignon Blanc, called the Stone Blossom Sauvignon Blanc, 2019. How about you?
I have the Albarino, 2019 Albarino, and then I could not open the Gruner Veltliner because you just don't get those very often, and
Yeah.
it's so delicious. And so that kicks off really my first question is, why do you love these varieties, and did they find you or did you find them?
Oh, I think it's a combo of so many things. I don't know. Throughout my say adult drinking life, I've been drawn to white wines, and with our rich history in the Etna Valley, obviously white wine such as Chardonnay has always thrived as just being at home in our cool little valley. But through the years, we did some experimentation in the vineyard many years ago. But I've also traveled, been fortunate to travel, throughout the world. And I've been to so many killer, great wine producing regions that thrive with white wine. You're talking Champagne, Alsace, Alto Adige, the Rias Baixas, Marlborough down in New Zealand. And every time I come home and have wines from the Etna Valley, I would taste them and just be like, dang, we're right there and no one even knows it. So yeah, kind of my vision with Cadre is to embrace all things white wines, with specifically Sauvignon Blanc, Albarino, Gruner Veltliner. And really, I truly believe that Etna Valley deserves to be in the conversation of being one of the great white wine white producing regions of the world. So it's what I'm out there to do with Cadre. And, so Albarino, I've been fortunate to work with it since 2005. Gruner, we planted in 2006 and 7. And Sauvignon Blanc goes way back. I mean, this Sauvignon Blanc right here is 100% from my grandfather's original planting. So those are 48-year-old vines planted just after I was born. So kind of have a tight bond with that block, and it shows in the wine. I mean, I'm super excited with how the first vintage came out.
There are not too many wines in the Etna Valley that could say they come from 48-year-old vines.
I think that might be the last. I've been scratching my head and thinking, and I don't think there's any more Chardonnay or Pinot Noir left in the valley with that from that original planting. So that block 103 is the last of the last, and it's amazing. These things are like trunks, are this big. They've been sitting out there in the pathway of the Pacific and all the fog and wind we get for 48 years. They're weathered souls out there, but they're doing their magic still at 48 years.
Is Sauvignon Blanc known for continuing to be basically economically sustainable with old vines like that?
I think so. I mean, it's part of the Bordeaux varietal family, and that kind of vine age on Cabernet is great as well. Our experience of that in Valley is certainly Sauvignon Blanc outperformed Chardonnay as it got older. Chardonnay just yields got very low. Vines just didn't produce much, and quality wise. The quality was there, but not as spectacular as what we saw with Sauvignon Blanc. So it's the last stuff in the ground, and we got to do our best to make sure it's nurtured and shown its due characteristics.
Yeah. Well, when just preparing for this call and thinking about the varieties that you make, when you go to a trade tasting, of which I'm sure you've been to a few over the years, all of the trade people in the trade love wines like this. They seek them out at tastings, which
Yep,
I think they're like wine geek varieties, but they're also really approachable for the newer wine drinkers, the younger set, which all wineries are kind of, we all want more young
for
people
sure.
buying our wines. They're the future.
Yeah, I mean, these are kind of discovery varietals minus the Sauvignon Blanc. And, with that, I mean, this is more my interpretation. I think consumers are much more willing to kind of take a leap of faith on a glass of white wine, off a wine list that they've never had, as opposed to, the big investment in a Pinot Noir or red blend or Cabernet. And people love discovery. I mean, that's what wine's all about. I mean, if you look at the kind of the stats behind what's driving a lot of new business, it's the discovery wine shopper and or the discovery drinker, and these fall right into there. I mean, Albariños start. I kind of like to think, you have Chardonnay way up here, then you have Sauvignon Blanc here, and then maybe Pinot Grigio here. Riesling's always kind of off on the side doing its own thing, and then there's this whole pool of the other
Yep.
whites. And I like to think that Albarino and Gruner have kind of done a good job of kind of trying to jump out of the pack there. I mean, the following that Spanish Albarinos developed is tremendous, and then Gruner is kind of always been back there, kind of a big kind of wine geek favorite. But people are starting to discover it. I mean, it's a name they can't even pronounce in many cases, but man, when they get in their mouth, they're like, okay, I like this. So yeah, they're fun wines to definitely share with people. There's nothing I love more than pouring these wines either with a very well-known palate or someone that's having this for the first time, because you can kind of see the smile. They're wines that bring smile to people's faces.
Yeah, you hear people say, "Oh, I don't really like Chardonnay," but you really never hear anybody say they don't like Gruner,
Yeah.
because it is what it is. It's fantastic. It's delicious. And I will say, I was talking to some people from Austria one time, and they said, "Oh, Veltliner," and it just kind of stuck with me. And I know that in this valley, most people say Veltliner, but
Yeah.
I say
Well,
I go
it's
both ways. Yeah.
it's a fun varietal, and I think Gruner. A lot of people associate it as a low alcohol, light sipper. You can buy it in the 1 liter bottles with the crown cap, but
Yeah.
if you've had Austrian Gruners, they go the whole spectrum. And if you've had some of the most sought after ones, they're a little riper, they're a little fuller, and it's great. And all these varietals kind of see that. You can make the light, bright sipper. I mean, look at Vinho Verde out of Portugal, which is typically Alvarinho based. That's low alcohol, could have some effervescence, all the way to the Rias Baixas. They're making Albarino that sits on the lees and cask for 36 months. Yeah, and it ends up tasting,
Oh,
almost like a white Burgundy than Albarino. So the spread on all these are tremendous. And, the Etna Valley, why I believe it's such a fantastic place for white wines is we're kind of this anomaly region. Think about it. You live and breathe the Etna Valley. We have an early bud break. We're far enough south that our winters aren't as mild, so we get early bud break. We're talking February, and then we have these cool summers. I mean, look at yesterday. I think the fog burned off at like 3 or 4 o'clock. And that cool summer then lengthens our growing season and puts us into October, sometimes November, but we're far enough south in California that, knock on wood, we don't have the threat of harvest rains, so we could sit out there, patiently wait for the fruit to get ripe. And so we'll get ripe fruit, but what's preserved is that beautiful natural acidity. And to me, that's the holy grail in white wine. You get ripe fruit, preserve a ton of natural acidity. We also happen to have some pretty unique soils, so we could kind of pull some minerality into the wine. And man, that's my groove right there, those three things.
yeah, you have a lot of great information about the soils and in the Etna Valley, and just the long history of the Etna Valley. And do you think that your grandfather had all that when he saw this area and thought, I think I'll be the first one to plant some vines down there? Or was he
I
taking a
think there
flyer?
was a calculated shotgun approach, if there's such a thing. He hired in the summer of 1969, the summer of love, Professor Winkler from Davis and Professor Petrucci from Fresno State, the two godfathers of higher education of viticulture. And he hired them basically independent of each other, not really knowing they were hired to do the same thing. And that was to go up and down the Central Coast and identify regions to plant grapes. And they both pulled him aside and said, hey, there's this little valley outside of San Luis Obispo. It's transverse. It opens up directly to the Pacific Ocean. We think it can be pretty special. And so he took that advice and jumped full in. He planted 542 acres out of the gate, 1973.
Wow.
You know, well over 12, I think it was about 13 varietals, and half of that was white wine. And quite honestly, the other half that was red wine, the only stuff that's left is Pinot Noir. The Merlot couldn't even set a crop, and it was way too cool for Zinfandel and Cabernet. So to answer your question, he had some pretty smart guys in his ears saying this place could be special, but you really don't know until you get those vines in the ground. And it was, you know, it's a long process to get where we are today. But yeah, back in 1973, like I said, the calculated shotgun approach maybe, but I like to think he had a vision, and you know, we probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that.
Oh, I know. I would guess that this was one of his plantings. I was at Howard and Vicky's house like 10 years ago, and they had a Cabernet Sauvignon, Edna Valley Vineyard Cabernet from the late 70s, I think.
Yeah.
And it was terrible.
Yeah.
It's in like the top 5. I mean, it was already really old too, but I think Jim Eford was there and said, yeah, we tried that, and no, not in the Edna Valley. It's just too cool for that.
I mean, from my memory, about 1 in every 10 years, it made a wine that didn't taste like bell peppers and pyrazines. So, you know, in the wine business, you can't afford 1 in 10 years. But, you know, back then he was selling to a winery in Napa for over 20 years. So that Cabernet actually stayed in the ground. And you know, I was talking to someone the other day, when that contract ended and was canceled, we tore out all those vines. It was almost 100 acres of Cabernet. And at the same time, that's when we started this exploration of planting Albarino and Gruner. So it was kind of perfect timing. If we hadn't taken out that Cabernet, we wouldn't have had the land to start planting something like Albarino. So, you know, in the you know, the world we live in, all these things kind of move around and align for a reason. And you know, that cab that tasted like bell peppers got out, and we were able to plant 45 acres of Albarino, which was a pretty aggressive approach. But we definitely had a hunch Albarino would really be at home in the Edna Valley.
Well, I mean, boy, planting 500 acres from the get-go, that doesn't happen very much, I don't think, anymore. But, you know, that expression, you have to crack an egg to make an omelet. So, you know, he got a lot of winners out of that initial planting, and if some has to get replanted, and, you know, after saying the door closed but the window opened on Albarino.
Yeah,
people love Albarino.
It's fate. And you know, speaking of Albarino, we did a great trip back in 2007 with our winemaker for Tangent in Bailana, and my cousin and our vineyard manager. We went to Vino Verde and the Rias Baixas, you know, in the northwest tip there, for just about 2 weeks. And we were fortunate enough to travel with a wine writer who opened up the door to all these great wineries. And we saw the who's who of Albarino over there. And really what we learned is Albarino in the Edna Valley has a lot of similarities to Albarino in Galicia and the Rias Baixas. And, you know, we came back and, you know, we kind of learned a lot of what we were doing was right, but some of it wasn't. And we made some tweaks. It was very early on. We're talking on our second or third vintage of making Albarino. But, you know, since then, I counted 2 years ago, I think 27 separate bottlings of Albarino from the Edna Valley. So, you know, there's various fruit sources now growing Albarino in the Edna Valley. And to me, that is such a concentration of Albarinos that it has to be the most outside of Spain or Portugal. And at the same time, with the quality that everybody's making with Albarino in the Edna Valley, I would proudly say that the Edna Valley is the new world home of Albarino. outside of Spain and Portugal. And it shows in all the great wines that everybody's making. And, Cadre, I hope we're right there as well.
Yeah, I think so. Well, let's talk about Gruner. Had a 501 with Eric Johnson from Tally a few weeks ago,
Yep.
and I believe they have Gruner in the ground.
Yep. I
Have
think
you
they
heard
got
this?
about an acre and just bottled their first Gruner. So yeah, I can't wait to taste
I
it. I haven't had it yet.
I think they have you to thank for that because it's Johnine's favorite variety, I
Yeah.
guess, and I'm sure it was you guys that that put her in that exposed her to it and made her love it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad they planted some because I think kind of like Albarino, Gruner loves that Valley. I mean, to me, two great characteristics of Gruner is kind of that white pepper, and then you kind of get that grapefruit. And in our Gruner, and we've seen in other Edna Valley Gruners, that grapefruit kind of comes through as that squirt soda, if you remember squirt soda,
Hmm.
and you kind of back that with some beautiful minerality as well as some bright acid. And to me, that's Gruner. I mean, with Cadre, I'm aiming to get a little more fleshiness on the palate, a little more of that texture. But it's such a fun wine. It really, it kind of, like I said, when people discover it, that they kind of don't look back. Who doesn't love to discover a new wine and fall in love with it? That's kind of, the greatness of our industry. I mean, there's no one in this world that stops learning about wine. And if they say they have, then you should probably turn around and walk the other way because there's so much to learn and so much discovery on, what people are growing and making, throughout our whole planet.
And these are all stainless steel fermented, I would assume.
Yep. So all stainless steel, kind of slow and low. We try to leave the wine on the kind of fine lees as long as we can. That's going to bring out some of that texture, and then bottled, in the springtime and out for summer. So it's fun because you kind of get to see the rewards of that labor, a little quicker than you would if you were making, a big Cabernet or, a long barrel aged Pinot Noir. So it's kind of, I was just thinking about that today. I'm like, wow, we almost got to start planning for bottling. We would bottle, not till the spring, but it's a kind of a different mindset when you're making these wines. Fresh and
To
crisp.
get your stuff lined up.
Yeah, that's,
They
fresh.
are fresh and crisp, but the least comment is interesting because they are super zippy with ginger and acid, but the texture is very pleasing and smooth, and that must be the lees.
Yep, and that's kind of
Aging.
like I said, my vision is to kind of bring out a little more of that fleshy, beautiful texture and that mid palate that you get in these white wines, but at the same time, just have screaming acidity, bright fruit, super clean wines. But these are fun wines to drink, but I also like they're super serious wines, and I know they will age well. In our previous world of making these varietals, we actually just, it was about a year ago, did a vertical of Sauvignon Blancs going back to 2005 all the way through 2018. And I was shocked on the age worthiness of those wines. I mean, something like the 2009 tasted like the current vintage. It's pretty cool.
That is fantastic. I've never done that.
Yeah, I mean,
Who'd have thunk? Yeah.
um,
And then we need to mention the sparkling Albarino because I don't think I know anybody else who makes such a thing. But it just like once you say the words out loud, you're like, of course, it's a
yeah,
variety for it.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm always shocked that there's not more, especially coming out of Spain and Portugal, because it's a high acid, bright, beautiful varietal that could just thrive under sparkling conditions. So yeah, we call it the Ode to Pearls, the Cadre Ode to Pearls. It's a 2017, and so it was Entourage for a good 2 years, and then disgorged just in June. And when we were doing our dosage trials, we decided that we wanted to keep it as racy as we could get. So there's zero dosage, so there's no sugar added back to it. It's bright, it's racy. I gave you a bottle so you can enjoy that at a later date. I'd love to hear what you say, but it's had proper aging. It's got some of that beautiful creamy kind of baking spice texture, but you can't hide the Albarino. Albarino in this comes out as more, I think, kind of that apple type characteristic, while the Albarino you have is more kind of that citrus, kind of tangerine type. So, it's amazing with a little bit of age what happens. But yeah, that's a fun wine. So yeah, so we got our lineup, which is the Stone Blossom Sauvignon Blanc made from 48-year-old vines. We got the Sea Queen Albarino, the Band of Stones Gruner, and the Eau de Pearls Sparkling Albarino. That's the Cadre right there.
That is fantastic. And I appreciated something on your website about I'm not going to remember anything except the punchline that hit home with me was we started this winery and a second mortgage later and we're good to go.
Yep.
And
I mean,
that is, I hear you. And I want to tell you something that your grandmother said to me, or said to Steve, really, and I was sitting there in 1994. She wanted to know, okay, what are you doing? She wanted to know what people's business was in the Valley. And he said, I've started my own brand and I'm making Pinot Noir and I'm making Chardonnay. And she listened and she listened. And then she said, all right, now you just need to make $1 million.
yeah.
And I have remembered that to this day that yes, exactly. That's the point. The point is to have a thriving business concern. I mean, you want to make good wine, but you also want to be able to support yourself and,
yeah,
your grandparents.
That sounds like Catherine. She's, she was a go-getter and certainly stated her opinion, whether right or wrong. So it was good to hear that in your case, you got the words of encouragement. But yeah, I mean, you can't be a passionate entrepreneur without taking that leap of faith. And, that's what we've done with Cadre. And, we're 2 months in, actually 2 months in yesterday. We launched it on July 1st. So all this is new, but it's been super rewarding. We've actually drummed up a whole lot more business and I thought we would. Right now the wines are just sold in California, but we've been getting a lot of great placements with a lot of good, restaurants and retailers. So you got to crawl before you can walk and walk before you run. And that's what we're doing here.
I heard someone say today, you only do something first once, and then after that, you know what you're doing. But it's true. You have to start, and the start can be nerve-wracking, but then you're rolling.
Yeah.
So how do people buy your wine now if they want to buy? Can they buy it from you directly?
Yeah, so I mean, we have it on our website. We have free local delivery. If you're out and about shopping, Wine Sneak has the DePaulo and Sons, Slow Wine and Beer. It's also, if you're online, wine.com has it. So if you're up in North County, the Oak Hill Market, I'm probably missing a few, but yeah, down in LA, Wally's and the Wine House. So it's out there, but yeah, always on the website as well. We don't mind those type of sales.
Yeah, that is a lot of places that you can rattle off for somebody who started not too long ago, a few months ago. Those are good placements. And but on your website you have a cart, so people can buy it directly from you, which we all like when people buy direct. But we like both. We need to develop both sides of our business.
For sure.
Yeah. And then are you thinking about starting a wine club?
Yeah, I mean, part of the challenge is, it's all white wines and we only have 4 of them right now. So, we may have to expand that, but kind of my mantra at the beginning of this is that, the old, what they call KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And so I want to keep it simple, kind of get our legs underneath us for the first couple of years. But yeah, there will be much grander plans. Hope someday to have a tasting room. Probably not anytime soon, even though you never know. I'll knock on wood on that one. But yeah, I mean, these wines, you'll hopefully start seeing more out in the market. They're fun. The labels are totally, beautiful. I got to give a shout out to Makers and Allies, who is a local design firm who I've been fortunate to work with for many years. They really.
I'm going to put this one up too, because they're all different. Like if you look at them, if you take a glance, you think, well, I didn't think they were the same. But when you look at them, there's an incredible amount of detail in there.
Yeah, and each
Beautiful.
label kind of is intended to capture the essence of each wine. But yeah, the team of Makers and Allies, they killed it. They hit hit a home run. When I saw those for the first time, I was just like blown away. So super fortunate to have them design it. Yeah, it's kind of everything slowly coming together. But I got
Yeah.
a long history in this valley. I've been here, really with my grandfather's roots, but actively in this industry for well over 20 years now. And to do things on my own it's scary, but as you and Steve probably know, it's as rewarding as it gets. So I'm super excited.
It is. It totally is. It's nice to have you on the small producer side because we've been in the same industry all these years and really kind of traveling in a different business model.
Yeah.
But maybe it's like sharing the pain of being a small business person, but I like to see, we can be very nimble and very passionate about what we're doing and answer only to ourselves when you're a small operator. And it is very rewarding.
I like to say,
drive home your 20-year-old car.
Yeah, I got one boss, and that's my wife Lucy, who's on this journey with me as well. And I think we're a great team. So we're having fun doing what we're doing, and we're both excited to see what the future brings.
That is fantastic. Well, congratulations. I look forward to drinking these two and the other two that I have. I'm going to throw out there and see if anybody has any questions. You can throw them up in the chat, or you can unmute yourselves and ask a question if you would like. We don't always get a lot of questions. There's one chat, but I think it was telling me that my volume wasn't loud enough. Yep. All right. Well, John, thank you for being here. And I think you are joining the ranks of the Slow Wine Collective after having been a very important member of the same group for decades before. But this show is not necessarily just about members. It's about all the interesting things that are happening in this valley, and yours is right at the top there. So congratulations to you and Lucy. And thank you everybody else for coming. And I hope you all go drink something delicious and eat something wonderful. We'll be back in 2 weeks with Tom Greeno from Sausalito Canyon.
Well, thank you.
Right.
I appreciate the opportunity to come on and kind of spread the Cadre word. It's grassroots, so we'll keep it going, and it's always great to see you.
Fantastic. We'll do it again. I'd like to get some different mixes of different people on here, not always just me. So there may be some other fantastic topic that you come back and talk about later.
I'd love to. Cool.
Well, all right. Bye, everyone.
All righty.
Thanks. You too.